Hello, this is my final league match for the Dominion League, and I need 2 points to qualify for the next round, so we'll see how this match goes. The first thing I noticed on the board is Rebuild. Rebuild strategies. Rebuild is an overpowering card most of the time, and because of that, one of my things to do when I see Rebuild is to look for ways to fight it, to go with a different strategy and to beat it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In that regard, I see something with heralds and tournaments. There's stonemason so that you can gain cards quickly, potentially trash cards quickly. With the tournament, you have access to prizes, so maybe there's a prize that is particularly significant and helpful against the rebuild. There was also developing rats into fives and threes, but there aren't attractive fives and threes on the board. And the last thing I looked at was Miser, which can be worth a lot of money, but I think it's going to take too long. I think all of this is going to take too long. I think the rebuild thing is fast enough and strong enough. The Herald with the tournaments and the Miser and the Stonemasons, it can form a formidable deck, but I think it will take too long to build. So this is why at the beginning of the game I opt to go for rebuild strategy really. Mostly playing rebuild strategy, but with a tournament in there. Maybe I can gain a prize. Tournament can also gain the duchies when you pay it with a province. So that is useful, and tournament is money at the beginning of the game. So not terrible for hitting 5, which is what I want to do on my tournament silver opening. My opponent goes for a develop on a tournament. Now the develop targets in your early game are estates. If you're getting rid of estates, it means you probably don't want to play rebuild. So I'm interested to see what my opponent is doing here. On 5, I pick up a rebuild, sticking to my plan, and my opponent trashes a estate here with the develop, gaining a silver. So here I have a silver left and an estate left, hoping for this tournament to draw the silver really because I want 2 tournaments in my deck. They're good in the early game, but just the estate for me. A choice here is between Crossroads and Silver. I go for the silver at this point because I want that extra bit of money in my deck so that I'm able to hit 5 again to buy rebuild reasonably likely. So talking about extra money, my opponent comes up with 7, goes for a stonemason overpay into 2 rebuilds at this point. Now this is something I didn't think my opponent would do, but they turn for the rebuilds at this point. So we'll see what becomes of this. And even they get to play their rebuild before mine. So the estate goes into a duchy there, and a stonemason trashes a copper. Now that is a play I didn't like, because if you are going for a rebuild strategy, trashing those coppers means that the rebuild and the green cards in your deck will be more likely together in your hand. If your deck is bigger, it is less likely. You want your rebuild to find the green cards, not be paired with them. So that's why I didn't like that trashing play for the stonemason if you're planning on going for a rebuild strategy. So on my last turn, I rebuild an estate into a duchy and pick up a duchess. The duchess rarely will serve as my sole terminal for this game and is an extra source of money. And I pick up the crossroads at that point. Getting some draw in would be good here, and I feel I have sufficient money. My opponent builds a duchy into a province, presumably because their last estate was in their hand. I just pick up a silver at that point. With 1 crossroads I think is enough, and I proceed along with the rebuilding of my estates into duchies. I only want the 1 duchess. Do not want those duchesses to collide. Even though I have a source of plus actions, there's no way for me to reliably line them up, so I'll just take the 1 duchess. I have my 2 silvers and they all show up here, so I'm able to actually I think I have a 3rd silver. Anyways, the choice here, I put the crossroads back because I think there's a green card in those 5 cards, so it'll draw 1 card. I was wrong, as you can see, but on 7 the choice was between a duchy and a pair of rebuilds. I opt for the pair of rebuilds. I think that's how I win the game, especially because I have the lead in the rebuild game at this point, and my opponent seems to be playing that game now. So if I just play my rebuild game, I'll get to the finish line faster. So rebuild here, naming duchy and turning one of my estates into another duchy here. Again, not going for the duchess. I play that tournament and I'm able to come up with 5 here. This duchess, I'm going to discard whatever card is at the top of my deck because I think I've gotten rid of all my rebuilds. Yeah, the discard pile shows 3 rebuilds, so I want to get back to them as soon as possible. And with 5, now it's time for the duchy. And here, I believe I have 4 duchies, or at least I can get to 4 duchies via the rebuild. And that's a good point to reach. It means your opponent hasn't locked you out of the duchy race. So my opponent here trashes another copper with develop and picks up an estate. So having to buy estates for rebuild isn't the greatest thing in the world, but sometimes you have to do it. And here my opponent names province with the rebuild. Now, I guess that means my opponent had the rebuild with the estate in their hand. So that stonemason trashing I think is hurting them here. I'm not sure, I can't see into their hand, but I think that's what's going on. So here I was hoping for this tournament to go through so I can win that duchy split. Winning the duchy split in a rebuild game often means winning the game, but wasn't able to do so. Tournament got blocked and just I picked up another tournament there. Rebuild at this point, naming province, so I want to convert those duchies into provinces. My opponent made an interesting play last turn, developing a rebuild into tournament and gold. So it seems like they're done with the rebuild plan now. However, my opponent's deck is very, very thin. They've trashed quite a bit of copper, so maybe they can go for some kind of engine with Herald and Tournament and make points that way. And they're able to get the first prize even here. So I was fully bracing for a follower's attack. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I can still get the duchy even with the follower's attack. However, my opponent picks up the princess, which I think is correct for them to do. And it allows them to get to province. That rebuild again acts as... Oh, sorry, this one doesn't act as a chancellor. This one actually trashes the estate and my opponent gains the last duchy here. Luckily, these tournaments make it through and I'm able to pick up a province just buying it, not through rebuilding, which is excellent in a rebuild game. That can be quite decisive. So at this point, my opponent now uses the rebuild here just to cycle their deck. So a $5 chancellor right now, naming province, because I believe my opponent just has 3 provinces in the deck and all the duchies are gone. I have 5 of them, or at least I have access to 5 of them, I should say, to be more accurate, and my opponent only has 7. I'm glad to see that. It would have put me under quite a bit of pressure here if my opponent got a 4th province. They stick tournament and province back on top of their deck with an overpaid Herald. The Herald is good for their deck too. So they're lining up for a prize, and obviously this tournament is going to get blocked. I play this Duchess to buy something meaningful, have to, and also it'll help me cycle towards my rebuilds more quickly because that's how I win the game, right? I have 4 rebuilds in these 20 cards. I need to find them as soon as possible and get my duchies into provinces. So right now I count and I believe the scores are level. My opponent has 1 more province than I do, but I have 2 duchies to compensate. And at this point I mistakenly think that my opponent has 2 rebuilds. And this influences my decision to buy the estate there because I'm thinking maybe it can be a tiebreaker. Maybe at some point my opponent can do rebuild, province into province, rebuild, province into province, then buy province. And I don't want them to win that way. So the estate can serve as a tiebreaker, which is why I go for it at that point. It does mean I have to make more difficult decisions with my rebuilds coming up, but I'm willing to do that. I think I have to do that in order to not immediately lose. Because I think my opponent has 2 rebuilds. They only have the 1, really. I should have been paying attention to that, but I missed that. So here I spend a bit of time. My opponent gets 2 estates on their last turn. So that's something to note. Just trying to stay ahead of the tiebreaker, I believe. Here I consider, I think, all the options with the tournament really. Is there a prize that'll help me? Diadem, if I draw it, will get me to province, but do I want to take that province? My opponent can get 2 provinces easily enough and would win the game on that, I believe. Or do I want followers? Or do I want to just not reveal the province and try to go for a card and a coin to find my rebuild maybe. In the end, I decide on the followers over the diadem because, well, I thought I was going to draw the diadem, but I choose the followers here because of the hand size attack. And that means that it is a lot less likely that my opponent can buy a province. So while they might be able to mill 2 as I thought, they can only mill 1 in reality. So while they might be able to mill 2, they can't buy the third, so they can't end the game, which is why I go for the followers. If I picked up the diadem and bought the province, it might have been bad for me. So here I'm able to block my opponent's tournament, so I'm glad about that, just preventing that free money. And they pick up the bag of gold, draw with the steed, play the bag of gold, so there's a gold sitting at the top of their deck right now, and the stonemason comes out here to pick up the last estate after trashing a tournament. Now I'm happy that all the duchies are gone because stonemason could just knock gold down into 2 duchies, which is our points play. So here I find one of my 4 rebuilds finally, able to build a duchy up into a province, and I draw 1 dead. Also with a tournament, which could have been money, so this is not a great turn for me so far. 3 here. Really, I don't think it matters what I buy because I probably won't see it, but the choice is between Crossroads and Silver. I get the Crossroads because I have quite a bit more green cards in my deck at this point. If there is a reshuffle, then it's more likely to draw cards, and that's what I want at this point. I want to find my rebuilds to finish the game. My opponent goes for a overpaid Herald here, but with the 2 rebuilds in my hand here, the game is over, especially seeing as how my opponent can buy no victory points here. So just rebuild and you name estate here, so you skip over your estates. If you find province, they go into provinces. If you find duchies, great, they go into duchies. But I have the lead, I believe, so it doesn't matter if I mill 2 provinces, and luckily I'm able to hit 2 duchies to turn them into 2 provinces. So the greens are empty, and that's the end of the first game. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next game.